All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross this time-space continuum to a place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, and the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. in the evening until midnight Eastern, right here on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on Classic1220.ca. And if you'd like to send me an email, it's very simple. xzone@classic1220.ca. Now, I know you've all been waiting to hear this news. The X Chronicles for April 2024 is now available with our compliments, and all you need to do to get your online version is go to www.xchronicles.net. That's XCHRONICLES.net. And the X Zone Chronicles, my friends, is the oldest newspaper published specifically for the world of the paranormal and science of parapsychology. This is our 35th year of publishing, and it's published 13 times a year. So that's a lot of publishing, and that's a lot of readers, and our readership is right around the world. So I want to thank each and every one of you for going to our websites, downloading the X Chronicles, and we love your comments, so thank you very much for being there, X Zone Nation. My guest this hour is no stranger to anyone who has listened to the X Zone over the last 30 years. His name is, you ready? Mark Anthony, and of course, he is the psychic lawyer, but he's also known now as the Psychic Explorer. And he's a renowned fourth-generation psychic medium, and we've had the pleasure of having Mark on the show many times. He's a great guest. And his website, for you who want to check him out after the show, not now, no. Keep your computer where it is, gang. www.afterlifefrequency.com. So joining me now from a busy tour that he's doing is my friend Mark Anthony. Mark, welcome back.
Thanks, Rob. It's always great being on the X Zone. I love this show, and I want to say to you and to all the listeners, congratulations. I understand the X Zone just got picked up by, 50 FM stations in the U.S. alone?
That's right. And we're still
awesome.
And we're still growing, Mark. And that's the nice part, because people want to know what is out there. They want to hear what the guest has to say. They want to be able to make their own minds up. And I'm not here to force feed anybody. This is why we bring guests like you on, because I believe that you have the pulse of the people out there when it comes to the work you do as a psychic medium. And the answers you give are credible, because you, my friend, are one of the best out there, if not the best. So thank you very much for your kind words. Hey, Mark, you're just, before we get talking about reincarnation, because everybody's talking about that, I'd like to ask you, as a psychic and as a medium, next Monday is the total solar eclipse. How does that affect the world of psychics?
Eclipses have been observed by humans throughout history, and the solar eclipse has a profound significance. People can consider them in the metaphysical field as a portal of transformation and renewal, and our energy can be largely affected by what's happening in the cosmos. So when a total eclipse happens, this is a pretty significant event spiritually, and throughout history, there have been some pretty profound events right around solar eclipses. Now, according to Scripture, when during the crucifixion of Jesus, when he died, it's said in Scripture that the sky went dark.
Right.
Now, there was a total eclipse which affected Judea lasted for 1 minute and 59 seconds, that occurred in 29 AD. And apparently other sources, other astronomers have indicated there was another eclipse that occurred for 4 minutes and 6 seconds in 33 AD. So we got two of them, 29 AD and 33 AD. Which went over Judea, modern day Israel, where Jesus was crucified. So that's a pretty ominous one right there. And according to Islamic sources, there was a total eclipse in 569 AD, which coincided with the birth of Muhammad. And, we could go on and on with this, but throughout history, people have equated eclipses with very profound spiritual events.
Now, how do you see this eclipse affecting the world?
Well, I certainly hope it's a wake-up call for the world, because the way I look at it, during a total eclipse in the affected areas, the temperature can drop 10 degrees. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's say humans are crazy enough to start a nuclear war, and all the scientists talk about the nuclear winter and what the nuclear winter is. All right, so let's say there's a nuclear war and all the nuclear powers decide to blast each other, and then, of course, hundreds of millions, billions of people are going to die, and those that survive, the atmosphere is going to be so filled with smoke and the fallout that it's going to block out the sun, and it will cause what's known as the nuclear winter, and essentially will go into an artificial ice age. And so the total eclipse, aside from just being fascinating from an astronomical, the point of astronomy, people need to take a serious look at, if that sun went out, what's going to happen to us? And I think that this eclipse may give humanity a glimpse of what could happen if we don't start being more careful.
Now, you just came back from a tour, and were people asking you about the importance of the eclipse and how the eclipse is going to affect the world, especially now that there is the economic crunches all over the world? We have the world is in one hell of a mess. I've never seen it like this before.
It really has. When I was I just returned from Houston and then from Sedona, Arizona, where I was at the Sedona Ascension Retreat. And of course, when you're in Sedona, first off, it's incredibly beautiful. And at night, it's amazing to be able to watch the stars there, because it's so dry being in the desert. You get a very clear view of stars. And prior to the invention of the telescope, in ancient times, an observatory was essentially a place where there wasn't a lot of humidity, where you could watch the stars and astrological phenomena at night. And of course, in Sedona, people are always talking about the eclipse, and a lot of people, we were discussing this, saying that it's going to herald in a shift, a planetary shift. Now, a lot of the folks in Sedona, they're like, oh, everyone's raising their vibration and it's wonderful. And it's nice to say that, but unfortunately, we don't live in the Republic of Kumbaya. And I'm hoping that it's more of an ominous, hey, you could plunge this entire world into darkness if you keep going on the path you're going. And I'm headed next to the New Living Expo, April 19th through the 21st in San Rafael, California. Then to Florida to the Unity of Tampa for the Reincarnation Conference at Unity of Tampa. And then on May 3rd through the 5th, and I'm speaking on May the 4th, and I can always remember that because May the 4th be with you. I will be at the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. And then in May, I've got 2 online spirit communication events as well. People can find out about all that. You mentioned my website earlier, afterlifefrequency.com. But this eclipse is really fascinating. Unfortunately, I'm in Florida, and I was checking a NASA site. There's a NASA site to see how much of it can you see. And from the vantage point that I'm going to be at, most of the sun will not be blotted out, but there'll be like a corner of it, but I do want to caution everybody, please do not look at the eclipse directly. If you're going to look at the eclipse, do not look at it with the naked eye. Make sure you get those special glasses. They're all over the place, because you can burn out your retina, and you certainly don't want to go blind just to see the sun get blotted out for a couple minutes.
In fact, here in Niagara is one of the places where the eclipse can be seen in its totality, down at Niagara Falls, and we're expecting over 2 million people down into the city of Niagara Falls to view the eclipse. Hotels have been sold out for over a year. And
wow.
In fact, the Niagara region has been under a state of emergency for the last week in preparation for the event, with all the different EMS services, police, rescue, and so on. So it's a big event here, and I agree with you. If you're going to look at the sun, please make sure that you have the proper viewing glasses. And they're even saying that with some of these glasses that are being sold online and at stores, the maximum you should look at the sun is 2 minutes, because 2 minutes to 3 minutes you could suffer damage to your eyes that cannot be repaired. So,
people have to be very careful, and there's other ways of observing it. If you look online, there's ways to. I remember there you get a box and you punch a hole in it, and then you allow the image to be projected on a piece of paper so you can see it. So in other words, you'll see the same thing, but without exposing your retina to that type of damage. And I can't think of a more beautiful place than Niagara Falls. Number one, it's just one of the most beautiful places on Earth. But secondly, during the eclipse, that's got to really be something. But also being overwhelmed by 2 million people.
That's right.
So for everybody headed to Niagara Falls, please don't fall in the water. Please exercise caution. Please watch your children. A little common sense.
And Mark, you and I have got to go to...
What was that old saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Stand by, Mark. We've got to go to our first break. X-Zone Nation, and Mark Anthony is our special guest, afterlifefrequency.com. More on reincarnation after this break as we return to yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. Don't go away now. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. My guest this hour is Mark Anthony. His website is afterlifefrequency.com. You and I briefly touched the topic of reincarnation, Mark, and I've seen over the last couple of years more and more people showing a great amount of interest in reincarnation. Do you have any explanation for why this is, Mark?
What I found in my research was astonishing. Normally, when we think of reincarnation, Rob, you think of India, the home of Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, and Buddhism started in India. And all those religions reincarnation is a basic tenet. So we tend to think of this as a South Asian, an Eastern philosophy. But according to the latest research conducted by the Pew Research Foundation, the Global Research Society, and Ipsos, which is the Institute for Social Research, get this, Rob, 51% of the world's population believes in reincarnation. Wow. And that includes 33% of Americans. This is a huge fundamental shift. I'd say within the last 30 years, reincarnation has gone from sort of an Eastern concept and in the West a fringe belief to now a third of the United States population and 51% of the people in the world believe in reincarnation.
Why is that, Mark? What's the reasoning behind it? Is it because people are losing faith in the established religious philosophies, or they just want more than this little glimpse in time that we have to spend here on this planet?
I think all of the above. A lot of the traditional religions, like people tend to think that Christianity condemns reincarnation, but in the early centuries of Christianity, there were branches of it that did believe in reincarnation. And when you look in the Old Testament at Jacob's ladder, which is in Genesis 28, Jacob, he was he was traveling and he stopped for the night and he laid down and he had this incredible dream where he saw this vast ladder with angels ascending and descending in an unending procession. And, we can make the joke, it's sort of the original Stairway to Heaven in a lot of ways. But Jacob's Ladder is one of the most mystical and studied passages in the Old Testament, or, as folks of the Jewish faith, the Torah, because there have been so many different interpretations of it. One of which is the interconnectedness between heaven and earth, and one of them is reincarnation, and that the ascending and descending angels are representative of the cycle of spirits descending into human life, followed by ascent into the spiritual, and followed by a return to human life. And then when you look in the New Testament, initially, like I indicated before, there were branches of Christianity that believed in reincarnation. Origen of Alexandria, an early Christian theologian, he said that there's no eternal damnation, that all souls go through multiple ages and lifetimes and eventually ascend to be with God. But that was banned as heresy at the Fifth Ecumenical Council in the 6th century. Long story short, not everything was banned. The Transfiguration, which is in Matthew 17, Mark 9, and Luke 9, this is one of the most incredible passages in Scripture, and this is heavily studied by progressive Christians, Hebrew scholars, Buddhist, Hindu, all types of religious scholars. It's where Jesus takes some apostles to the top of a mountain, and suddenly he glows white, a mist forms, and the spirits of Moses and Elijah appear on either form of Jesus. Now, understandably, the disciples are really shaken by this, and after it's over, a discussion Jesus has with his disciples is, who do you say that I am? And basically what they said, one of the disciples said, some people say that you're John the Baptist, and others say that you are the prophet Elijah returned. Now, this is really significant, Rob, because John the Baptist was Jesus's first cousin,
right?
And who was beheaded by order of Herod Antipas. I mean, that's a whole story unto itself. But Elijah lived 800 years before them, and what Jesus says in Matthew 17 verses 11 and 12, he said, "But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but they have done to him everything they wished." Then the disciples understood he was talking to them about John the Baptist. So the progressive Christian scholars, Hindus, Buddhists, who are studying this can be interpreted as Jesus saying that his cousin John the Baptist was the reincarnation of the prophet Elijah, who had lived 800 years earlier. So when people say that, well, I'm Christian and I don't believe in reincarnation, you need to start taking a closer look. And to answer your question, a lot of people are turning away from the more traditional chapter, line, and verse dogmatic religions and looking beyond that. The whole idea of eternal damnation, like if you don't get it right in this life, you go, take that elevator down to eternal suffering. People are getting away from that because there's too much evidence to the contrary through near-death experience research, through spirit communication, through legitimate mediums like myself, through people having out-of-body experiences. There's just too much contradictory evidence, along with the case studies of people who recall prior lives, which are not only detailed, but those details can be verified. So things are shifting from, let's say, hardcore religion to a more open-minded spiritual belief system.
Now, when you're speaking to people on your tour, or when you do, lectures wherever you go, what is their take on reincarnation? How do they believe they're reincarnated?
Oh, people are very open to it. I mean, there's always some people, I don't believe it. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of other people who say, well, I do believe it. And what the thing I like to ask people is, are you drawn to certain time periods and cultures? Do you have talents that just sort of come naturally? Have you experienced deja vu, a sense that you've seen or done something before, even if you haven't? If so, these may be symptoms or indications, I think is a better word, indicators of reincarnation. I mean, and when you see a child prodigy start playing the piano perfectly at age 3 or 4, or people that are almost obsessed with certain time periods throughout history, that's very fascinating. But when we come back from the next break, I can give us a few quick case studies which will really indicate that there's more to reincarnation than what, than just it's an interesting thought.
Reincarnation, is it now more acceptable than it was, let's say, 10 years ago? And are people now equating near-death experiences with reincarnation as well as other parts of the world that you and I both study?
Yes and yes. People are equating. People are believing in reincarnation more and more. It's much more widespread, and we've got the data from Pew Research and the other organizations to support that. And people are equating near-death experiences with reincarnation, and the reason for that is that people who have a near-death experience, like myself and like many of my colleagues, when they return from the experience, they believe in reincarnation. That's one of the common factors in near-death experiencers, is when they return from the experience, they believe, number one, even atheists come out of the experience believing that there's a divine power, a God, if you will. They believe that we're all interconnected energetically. People have a much more positive view on life, and people believe in reincarnation. And one of the first documented cases of that is in Plato's Republic, where Plato writes about this warrior whose name was and he was killed in battle. And the Greeks, they burned their fallen warriors on funeral pyres. And was put on a funeral pyre, and they lit it, and all of a sudden he comes back to life. And the fascinating thing is his body had been non-functioning for 10 days. He was most likely in a coma. And of course, when they saw him moving around, they pulled him off. And he started talking about going through a tunnel into a light and seeing his loved ones who had died. And he said there was a feeling of interconnectedness. And then he started talking that we live several lifetimes, but we drink from the river of forgetfulness between the lifetimes, which is why we don't remember them. The fascinating thing there, Rob, is in the ancient Greek and Roman religions, with the gods on Mount Olympus and all that. Reincarnation was not part of that belief system. So there are other highly documented cases throughout history of both near-death experiences and reincarnation. And in the past century, the study of reincarnation has been brought out of fringe Eastern philosophy to where it is now being subjected to the scientific method of analytical observation. And it is just amazing the things that are coming out.
Mark, you and I have to take a short break in about 1 minute. Quickly, tell our listeners where you're going to be next on your tour.
I'll be in San Rafael, California, which is right near San Francisco, April 19th through the 21st at the New Living Expo. And that's going to be an amazing event. The week after that, on the 28th, I will be at the Unity of Tampa, Florida, at the Edgar Cayce Reincarnation Conference there. And then the week after that, on May 4th, I'll be in Virginia Beach at the Edgar Cayce Association for Research Enlightenment and Enlightenment for their annual Reincarnation Summit. And I'll be presenting my talk, Debunking Death: The Science of Reincarnation and Near-Death Experiences.
Mark, stand by. You and I have to take that break now. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour, the one and only Mark Anthony, please visit his website. And you can get his books on his website, as well as find out where he's going to be at www.afterlifefrequency.com. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, and Mark Anthony and I will be back on the other side of this break as we continue here on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca.
Hello, yeah, it's been a while. Not much. How about you? I'm not sure why I called. I guess I really just wanted to talk to you. And I was thinking maybe later on we could get together for a while. It's been such a long time and I really do miss your smile. I'm not talking about moving in, and I don't want to change your life.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. My guest this hour is Mark Anthony, the psychic explorer, also known as the psychic lawyer. Yeah, there you go. Brain goes one way, mouth goes the other. What a hell of a mess it can be. And, of course, his website is afterlifefrequency.com. We were talking about reincarnation, and you were going to tell us after we came back from the last break that we just took some interesting stories as well as statistics.
There are two ways that people remember prior lives. One is it generally occurs with young children. There'll be a toddler, and around age 3 or 4, he or she will start talking about a prior life with extreme detail. The second way is through past life regression therapy, which is where the subject is hypnotized and brought back into a prior life, and it is used by the American Psychological and Psychiatric Association's PLRs, what is called past life regression, to treat phobias, like get to the root cause of a phobia that doesn't have any basis in this life. But the paradox there, Rob, is that both of those associations do not validate PLR as evidence of a prior life. In other words, they're kind of covering their tracks there. They don't want to come out and take a stance on reincarnation, which I think they're really doing a disservice. But let me back up to children. Mm-hmm. And there's a really great story. It occurred in 1926 in Delhi, India. This little girl, Shanti Devi, she was born in Delhi, and around her 4th birthday, she told her parents, "This is not my home. I have a husband and a son in the city of Mathura, and I want to go back to them. Now, this is India. And so her parents are like, oh, our daughter had a prior life. But she kept going on with extreme detail. And it started getting around Delhi. And she even gave the name of her husband. She named him as Kedarnath. He was a cloth merchant in the city Mathura, which is about 60 miles away. And she said that she died during childbirth. She even knew the address of her prior home. Well, the local headmaster went ahead, the school headmaster heard about this, so he got the address and wrote a letter to Kedarnath, and he actually received a response. And this gentleman wrote back and said, well, this is true. My wife did die giving birth to our son about 5 years, 5 or 6 years before Shanti Devi was born. Mm-hmm. Well, this starts getting around India, and at the time, India was a British colony, but it had, its own government overseen by the British, and the Indian government set up a commission to investigate this. And get this, Rob, they put in charge of this commission none other than Mahatma Gandhi.
You're kidding.
No, and it was documented by the Swedish journalist Sture Lonerstrand, mm-hmm. and he was an award-winning journalist. And so Gandhi's commission, what they did is they set up like a number of tests to see if Shanti's information was coming from her as opposed to an outside source, and she checked out right down the line. So then they said, well, let's take her to Mathura. Now, once again, this is the 1920s India. Nowadays you just, get on a cell phone and check all this stuff up. But 60 miles back in 1926, over 100 years ago, isn't 20 miles or 60 miles like today. Yeah. It was a pretty massive train. Yeah, it's a massive train trip. So they get to the town, and she's 6 years old by this time, mm-hmm. and they said, all right, tell us where your house was. She gets off the train. Nobody let her there. She went through the streets, and the commission followed her. And then she walks up to this house and says, well, that's my house. Well, meanwhile, the commission had hired an actor to play Kedarnath. And the actor was standing in the doorway. And he said, hello, I'm Kedarnath. And she looked him up and down and said, no, you aren't. And she looked in the crowd and pointed to this guy who was Kedarnath.
Oh, my gosh.
And she said, yeah, she goes, he's my husband. And then she started saying the house used to be painted a different color. Then she started giving details about the family and relatives of theirs in that prior life who had extramarital affairs. Then she even said that when she used to have sex with Kedarnath, she had arthritis in her pelvis, which made relations very painful. And well, Kedarnath is about to lose his mind, like, oh my God. And so everything that she said mm-hmm. was with pinpoint accuracy, and this commission came to the conclusion that Shanti Devi was actually the reincarnation of Lugdi Devi. And the thing is, in India, a lot of people have the same last name because it's a caste and it's a class name. But it is interesting that Shanti Devi was deemed to be the reincarnation of Lugdi Devi. And Shanti Devi lived until the 1980s. She was interviewed constantly about her prior life, and she is considered to have been the most heavily documented, what's known as case of the reincarnation type, CORT, C-O-R-T, case of the reincarnation type in the 20th century.
Mark, how come she remembered all this information? Was there something that happened to her that kind of jogged her memory? Why was she able to surpass the veil of forgetfulness?
That's the big question, because in 1967, Dr. Ian Richardson founded the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, and he wanted to apply the scientific method to reincarnation. He examined over 2,500 children like Shanti Devi who recalled prior lives. And it's really fascinating. I mean, there's scores of books about Dr. Richardson, But now reincarnation was beginning to be studied seriously. The question is, why do some people remember these lives and others don't? And there appears to be some type of block for some reason, which leads us now to PLR, past life regression therapy. And the thing is, Rob, it's one matter for a little girl in the 1920s and 30s in India to talk about a prior life. But when you are talking about an Indianapolis police captain who heads the homicide division, that's a whole different story. And I had the honor of interviewing on my show, The Psychic and the Doc, Captain Robert Snow. And he was working on a case, and he came into contact with a past life regression therapist. Now, he was born to a very conservative, Midwestern Christian background, and he didn't believe in reincarnation. And he said, yeah, that's just people, goofy people trying to blame problems in this life on another life. And the past life regression therapist challenged him to engage in PLR. So he figured he'd do it. And he was astonished that during the PLR session, the barrier between the lifetimes vanished, and he went into 3 different lifetimes, one where he was a woman. Now, that's not something this big bruiser police captain had anticipated, but what really rocked his world is when he remembered a lifetime in the late 1800s. He saw these cobblestone streets. He kept identifying with France, but he knew that he didn't die in France. He died somewhere else in a big city. And he said it was like a theme park ride, like he was riding through this lifetime. He could see it, hear it, taste it, smell it, experience it. And he saw himself painting a portrait. And he recalled hearing, "I hate painting portraits, but I need the money." And he saw himself painting a portrait of a hunchback woman. And he comes out of this, and he started taking notes and engaged in PLR several times. Well, this was in 1992, and the internet, as we know it, wasn't available for public use until 1993, even to a police captain.
Right.
So he started going to libraries and looking at art books, looking for portraits of a hunchback woman. Nothing. He was doing his best, so it was really plaguing him. Well, his wife wanted to go to New Orleans. They'd never been there before. He was recently married. And so while they're walking around in art galleries on Royale Street, he walks into this small gallery, and his heart almost stopped. He said, there it was on an easel, the portrait of the hunchback woman.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And he's like, this is impossible. And he said to the gallery owner, who painted this? And the gallery owner looked it up and said, well, the guy's name was J. Carroll Beckwith. He was from New York, but spent a lot of time in France. Now the police captain had something to go on. So he went to to New York City, and he found at the National Academy of Design on microfilm, J. Carroll Beckwith, that artist. He submitted his diary, which was put on microfilm or microfiche, 17,000 pages. Wow. And so Robert Snow pored over every one of them and was able to verify every single detail that he got in his PLR and his past life regression therapy. And he found out that this guy, he spent a lot of time in Paris. He mostly did portraits, produced no masterpieces, died in obscurity in New York City. And that's what he had gotten, was that he spent a lot of time in France, but died somewhere else in a big city. Long story short, why would somebody make this up, especially a police captain? And number two, why would you say, oh, in a prior life, I was an obscure artist that amounted to nothing? I mean, why didn't you say, oh, I was Monet or Michelangelo or, Leonardo da Vinci? And so when studying past life regression therapy, when you can zero in on a more recent lifetime like that.
Mark, we got to get going because I've got my final break. I'm sorry, pal. We'll come back to this because this is a fascinating story.
Yeah.
The best part is it's true. And it's in modern times.
Yeah.
Lifeafterfrequency.com is Mark's website, and we'll both be back as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on Classic 1220 and classic1220.ca. And welcome back to the final segment of the first hour here in the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. My guest is the one and only Mark Anthony. He is the Psychic Explorer, as also known as the Psychic Lawyer. His website, Exonation. If you'd like to buy any of his books, if you'd like to even contact Mark for a one-on-one consultation, his website is afterlifefrequency.com. Mark, I believe all your tour dates are on your website as well?
They are, and when people go to my website, go to the calendar of events, and you can scroll through it. You'll see what's coming up. And on Friday, May 17th, and Saturday, May 18th, I have online light circle events. They're limited to 6 people each, so that way everyone is guaranteed a connection with their loved ones in spirit. And you can find out about all of these events coming up and the light circles at afterlifefrequency.com.
Mark, can you, we were talking about the police captain who discovered his past life and how it was proved and how he found out who the artist was and who he was when he went into a little art show or art store or gallery in New Orleans. What did he feel at that moment when he realized that it was actually him, that his memories were real and he had lived before?
It just blew his mind. He's a real interesting guy to talk to, Robert Snow, great guy. And he said he was shocked. He said, I was in shock. He was like, this is impossible. How can this possibly be? And when he was looking at the painting, he recognized every paint stroke as his own. And that's the thing. He remembered a portrait of a hunchback woman. It's not like, oh yes, I was at the court of Louis the 14th and Louis the 16th and I painted Marie Antoinette. No, a hunchback woman. Number one, how many portraits of hunchback women are there? I'm not trying to be facetious, but secondly, why would somebody remember that? And once again, he wasn't saying I was a famous artist. He was a very obscure person in a prior life. And on the break, we were joking about, we were talking about the movie The Ten Commandments. And it's like, chances are we wouldn't be Moses or Pharaoh. We'd be the guys cleaning up after the horses and camels, because, people are always, I have people coming up to me, and saying, oh, I've heard so many women tell me that in a prior life they were Mary Magdalene. I mean, and I'm not talking 2 or 3. I've had dozens of people say, how many Mary Magdalenes could there have been? There, as far as we know from Scripture, there was one.
Right.
So when engaging in past life regression therapy, don't be surprised if you weren't Napoleon. Maybe you identify with the Napoleonic era. Maybe you were one of the soldiers. Maybe you were just somebody that worked in a field kitchen. You have to approach anything like this with an open mind. And past life regression therapy is a very powerful healing tool. Why are some people afraid of drowning? Why are some people afraid of heights? Why are some people afraid of certain things? There's phobias that people have, and PLR, past life regression therapy, is a legitimate treatment to go into a prior life to find out the cause of it. So, is it for everybody? No, that's a personal decision, but it certainly is a fascinating tool for investigating this incredibly amazing subject of reincarnation.
Mark, have you ever had a past life regression done?
I have.
And who were you in a previous life?
Well, I hit on a couple different ones, but there was one in particular that really struck me. I saw myself, it looked like I was in some type of farm, and I was laying on like a very crude mattress stuffed with hay. I felt I was around 25 or 26 years old, and I was dying. I was dying of, it felt like some type of lung disease, and I recognized a woman that I associated with as my mother, and I had 3 siblings there. And in this life, I only had 2 siblings, and basically I was dying of something like the flu, but I kept hearing the word Narbo, Narbo, Narbo. And then in that same lifetime, I saw myself younger, about 5 or 6 years old, and I was splashing around in this pool. It was like stone blocks, and there was these arches, and these other little boys were playing with me, and I could smell the water and all this. And the arches they were hewn from stone and made from these huge stone blocks. So yeah, that's neat and all, but afterwards. And when I got home, I started doing an internet search. I was like Narbo, N-A-R-B-O, and I put it in there, and all of a sudden, things started coming up of a ancient Roman town in what is now southern France, which was Narbo. So I'm looking at pictures of it, and my heart almost stopped when I saw the ruins of the baths there. And I recognized the arches, except in the vision I had in the PLR, they were brand spanking new. But what I saw, the modern day pictures, they're all broken and in ruins. And so for me, that was pretty startling.
When somebody comes back in a different life, do they come back to a family or a situation that they would have had in that previous life? For example, are the parents the same? Are the siblings the same? Or does everything change?
That's hard to say. There's a lot of researchers who believe in soul groups. In other words, we go through lifetime. Think of all the people, your family, close friends, as a cast of actors, and in each lifetime, they're just playing different roles. But in a case like Shanti Devi, the parents that she had in the lifetime where she was Shanti Devi were most definitely different than the parents she had in a prior lifetime, because those people were still alive. Okay, because she was a little girl who remembered a prior lifetime. And there's been a number of situations where these young children who remember a prior llifetime are introduced to the family of their prior incarnation, and siblings and people like that. So the answer is yes and no. We may come back in soul groups, and that also doesn't mean that in each lifetime we're dealing with all the same people. On the other hand, haven't we all met somebody for the first time and you feel like, I have known him or her forever? And then there's other people that you just automatically dislike. So there's a flip side to that coin too.
When this past life happens and the person realizes that, that yes, what they've had in their mind all this time is real, what they've felt in their heart is real, the surroundings that they have seen on TV or in books or on the internet were where they were. If they have very sad feelings about that past experience, is there any possibility that this may trigger some emotional damage that they didn't have before.
I think it could, but I think generally what happens is when they see something that triggers the sadness, or like with the past life regression therapy, where you're specifically going to confront that trauma, it has more of a healing effect. But who's to say that if you, let's say you come upon a place where you feel like you were murdered.
Right.
In fact, there's a story, I think it was a little boy in Turkey who said that he was murdered, that, he was bludgeoned to death with a hatchet. And he showed where it was, and so people started digging, and they actually found a body with the back of his head split open, presumably by an axe. So that's got to be pretty traumatic.
I wonder if this could be, if PTSD could be brought into this arena.
Yeah, absolutely. I've spoken a number of times on ancestral healing and how transgenerational trauma, trauma that happened to ancestors affects us to this day. And I think it may be even more salient in a case of the reincarnation types. That's why I love being on the X Zone, Rob. You ask the best questions.
Thanks, partner. Here's another one I don't know, and I'm going to ask this, and I'm asking this not to offend any listener. Is past life a possibility or a reason or the resulting in someone changing their genders? Yeah, I wonder if I said that without hurting anybody.
You mean like in the case of transgendered people?
Yes.
That's a fascinating topic, and I've discussed that with a number of people that study reincarnation. And the thought is somebody, let's say in the prior life, was male, and biologically they're female in this life, but psychologically they're still male. And so, and certainly, and by Rob and I discussing this, we are not trying to be offensive or insulting to anyone.
Definitely not.
That's simply a theory. And when dealing with reincarnation, I mean, it's a tough topic to research. So that is a possible explanation, because in my travels and throughout my life, I've encountered many transgendered people. I even have a cousin
as
who's transgendered, and I have no doubt that this is a very real phenomenon.
Mark, I wish we could carry on. It's always great talking to you. Again, congratulations on everything that you do. I know that you bring a lot of joy, comfort, and closure to a lot of people every time that you go out, every time you answer the phone. And I know that somewhere tonight in the great unknown, you've touched many hearts by being with us here in the X Zone. So until next time we meet, my friend, God bless, take care, and I hope you come back in the very near future.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Rob. And I want to thank all the people for tuning into the X Zone and helping to make it such a huge success. Thank you, Rob. God bless.
God bless you, my friend. X Zone Nation, if you'd like more information about Mark Anthony, please visit his website, afterlifefrequency.com. And if you'd like to find out where Mark will be appearing near you, go onto his website and check out the calendar. I'll be back on the other side of this break as Hour 2 of tonight's show continues here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streaming around the world on classic1220.ca. So whatever you do, don't go away.